What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news and updates, this time directly from Bungie and the TWID. So, for this week in Destiny, naturally, Bungie have a recap of a lot of the information that they revealed this week, but we did get that Revenant Act 2 live stream, so we'll cover some of those recaps, but additionally, Bungie talk about extra patch changes, updates, important things to be aware of with the launch next week, and give additional context for some of the sandbox tune-in, and a handful of other important items. So as always guys, I hope you enjoy the video, and if you're new around here, get subscribed and I'll keep you posted with more content. Otherwise, let's get into it. And so first up, once again, Bungie recap the Act 2 livestream that we had on Tuesday. Tomb of Elders is the key activity for Act 2, and as opposed to being a reworked Prison of Elders, it's kind of inspired by the original activity in Destiny 1, with the new version appearing to be a reasonably significant activity in terms of various encounter spaces, bosses, enemy races, themes and mechanics that we'll encounter during that activity. So that part of it looks pretty good. Bungie are also adding a couple of weapons from the episode set, including the SMG and shotgun, a reprised grid skipper, and otherwise in the preview, they additionally showed off some rewards for the Dawning 2024, new Street Fighter collaboration gear, Doki Doki armor, which is certainly very interesting stuff, and they even gave us a preview of the Slayer's Fang exotic shotgun, which we'll be getting in Act 3. Worth clarifying that because there's already been some confusion about why Bungie would show it off in the Act 2 livestream, and according to them it's because there won't be an Act 3 livestream as that will be happening over the holiday period. So that's the sort of quick roundup, and again give us any thoughts you have on what's been revealed. Next up though, as we get into Bungie's TWID, the focus turns to the sandbox, and they say starting with Act 2, we'll be changing the damage-based recharge parameters for all roaming supers against PvE combatants only, and increasing the amount of super energy gained when damaging combatants by roughly 3 times the amount it is today. On top of that though, they've said, we're upping the damage that roaming supers do against champions by between 30 and 55% depending on the super. This roughly brings all roaming supers to a similar damage profile against champions, and will give them a distinct advantage in your next Grandmaster Nightfall. And so they say we can expect these changes to apply to the following supers. For the Hunter, it's Arc Staff, and then Golden Gun, although they say it excludes Celestial Nighthawk variant as it's classified as a one-off super. On top of that, Spectral Blades and Silk Strike. Then for Titans, it'll affect Fist of Havoc and Burning Maul, but it excludes the Pyrogale Gauntlets variant as it's classified as one-off once again. Also includes Hammer of Soul, Sentinel Shield, Glacial Quake, and Blade Fury. Then for the Warlocks, we've got Storm Trance, Daybreak, Nova Warp, and Winter's Wrath. And they add that this is a major change, so they'll be keeping an eye on things over the coming weeks and months while we continue to evaluate how roaming supers are performing. And so keep in mind all of those roaming super changes affect PvE only, but they're pretty significant. And obviously there's some balancing going on right there, considering that we now have Prismatic as well, as Bungie attempts to sort of improve the appeal of various roaming supers once again for PvE. So give us your thoughts on those, but they also say there are a bunch of changes for exotics. So starting out, we've got the Point Contact Cannon Brace, and they say amplified lightning bolts will now do 100% increased damage over base, up from 50%. On top of that, Lightning Strike's defeats now also refund melee energy, but they have reduced the Thunderclap refund by 10% to compensate for increased energy gains on average. Then for the Raiden Flux, Synapse Junction's super damage benefit is increased to 20% per stack, up from 14%, and the max benefit is now 70% damage increase, which is up from 50%. So that's also pretty nice. And then we've got the Balador's Wrathweavers, and they're increasing the shadow damage to 150, up from 100%. And they've also fixed an issue where enemies were inconsistently getting the boosted shadow damage, which led to decreased overall damage. And they say increased shadow damage will now show as a yellow number to aid with visibility of the perk. So those are the exotic armor changes, and they say there'll be plenty of updates and tweaks to other exotics coming down the road in Heresy, many of them aiming to provide more potency to roaming supers. But given the other sandbox changes we've got for supers themselves, obviously that will increase the appeal of certain roaming super exotics in general. On top of that, there are a couple for weapons as well. So initially these are focused on PvE, and for breech-loaded grenade launchers, they say we've heard you loud and clear that the nerf to Mountaintop felt unnecessarily strong, So we've walked back some of the speed limit reduction that we previously gave to the blast damage impulse, and they've increased the velocity that players can generate with rocket jumping blasts. On top of that, for Telesto, they're increasing Telesto detonation damage by 20% in PvE. That's on top of Bungie fixing the recent bug where that detonation damage wasn't correct in the first place. So Telesto is going to be fairly punchy, I would imagine. And of course, it may potentially break other things in the game, because that's just what it likes to do. Next up though, for the update on the 19th, Bungie speak about some more PvP-focused changes, and they do touch on Prismatic. They say it's become clear that certain Prismatic subclass combinations are problematic for Crucible in a way that we cannot easily solve with spot tuning. And while we want to keep the power fantasy for PvE, in PvP, the dominance is concerning and needs to be more labor-intensive fix than we can provide inside of a mid-season patch. So they've made the decision for the moment to give all Prismatic subclasses a blanket 15% additional ability cooldown penalty inside of the Crucible, and that should help to offset their current strength. They say this penalty stacks on top of the current overall PvP ability cooldown penalty of 15%. So that's worth keeping in mind. They talk about Storm's Edge though, and they say it feels like too much of a win button with little to no counterplay, so they're reducing the height of damage impulses from 5 meters to 3.75 meters, but they've also reduced the damage resistance against players from 53% to 45%, both on cast and during the spin attack, and they've moved it from tier 3 to tier 1 super cooldown. So keep that one in mind. Next, an armor change that will affect PvP, and for Knucklehead Radar, they say the exotic's ability to provide information to PvP players without requiring them to engage in combat, and giving that information for as long as it does, has contributed to a bit too much of the strength of the longer range meta options. So they're changing how to activate the perk, and it now requires the wearer to damage a player to mark the target, and the target is marked for 3 seconds instead of 7 seconds, so quite a big change to that one. For weapon archetypes though, this is focused on PvP. For precision bows, they're increasing body shot damage by 10%, they say it does not affect the Le Monarch. Then for hand cannons, they're increasing aggressive hand cannon damage by 3%, which allows them to kill all resilience levels with 2 crits and 1 body shot. Then for Igneous Hammer, they're reducing stability, handling, and aim assist stats by 3. On top of that though, they say Better Devils will see increased stability, handling, and aim assist stats by 3, and they reiterate that they're correcting an issue with yesterday's question where the Headseeker perk wasn't appropriately increasing critical hit damage after dealing body shot damage. Lastly though, for machine guns, they're changing the scaler that determines how much ammo you can pick up from a crate, and magazine sizes of 50 or less will get 21 rounds. Mag sizes between 51 and 59 get between 21 and 26 rounds. Mags between 60 and 80 get between 26 and 27. Then mags between 81 and 99 will get between 28 and 44 rounds. Then all magazine sizes over 100 should get 45 rounds. So a big adjustment there to the amount of ammo we can pick up. Onto perks though, for high ground, they say dealing damage to a player with a primary weapon now only grants a single stack of the damage buff, whereas dealing damage with a special weapon or against combatants continues to grant the maximum stack. So that's that one. Also for explosive payload, they're reducing the splash damage from the perk when used on legendary hand cannons by 7%, which is against players only. And finally, for exotics in the Crucible, for Telesto, they've corrected an issue where the weapon was doing less damage than intended overall. For Ariana's Vow, they've fixed critical damage bug in PvP, and for Thorn and Lumina, they're increasing the base stability by 5. So those are the weapon tuning changes and the other sandbox adjustments for PvE and PvP. As always, give us your thoughts on them below. Last thing I'm going to cover from the TWID today though, and the Street Fighter Destiny 2 collaboration will indeed go live on November 19th. So there'll be a Blanka-inspired Universal Armor Ornament helmet for all classes, as well as 3 new ghost shells based on Cammy, Ryu, and Chun-Li, and then a handful of new emotes and finishers. So if you've been looking forward to checking those out, they're all dropping immediately on the 19th with the update next week. For today though guys, that's what we have to round up. So I'm looking forward to the new content and the updates next week. It's a reasonably significant update. Share your thoughts once again on them down below and the changes that Bungie have announced today. If you've enjoyed the video though, a rating below helps us out, and get subscribed to the channel so I can keep you up to date with everything related to the game. Otherwise though, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.